Hello and welcome back to Rehydrate. This season we'll be discussing the new Three Body Problem TV series that is based off of the book by Leah Shin. This is season 9, episode 0, a preview of the TV show that's coming on March 21st on Netflix. The showrunners are David Benioff and D.B. Weiss of Game of Thrones previous fame or infamy, and Alexander Wu. They'll be dropping the full season all at once, which is sort of annoying for recording a podcast, but here we are going to talk about it. We still haven't decided exactly how we're going to discuss the show amongst ourselves and record episodes, but we will be talking about it in some capacity. But I want to get us all together here to kind of talk about our what we know about the show, our expectations, and really just talk about like our first passions. This three body problem. We try to interject into every show we talk about, but now we're actually talking about the actual show. So my name is Dan, and I have read the series multiple times.
My name is Talia. I think Dan might also mention other adaptations that some of the hosts have seen. I've seen some of the Chinese adaptation, and I've read the series multiple times.
My name is Priya, and I have read all three of the books, not multiple times like my co-hosts, but I've gone back to some of my favorite parts over again. And I tried to watch the series that already exists. I watched like 2 episodes, and then I realized that all 30 or something episodes are all devoted to book one. So I kind of stopped there.
It's a lot.
I'll be interested to see what this upcoming show does.
Same.
Yeah, I watched all 30 episodes of the first season. It's a lot. There's like a little bit of redundancy and like some new like interjected like plot lines that don't really add to the story, and I think I maybe detract from it. But overall, I think it was good. Um, I mean,
Definitely very true, I think.
yeah, very very true to the source material.
A lot of respect to the source material. And it's funny that like so much of the discourse with shows nowadays is that seasons are so short and people feel like a little bit robbed of characterization because things feel like shoehorned into like an 8 episode season or 10 episode season where we used to have like 20. And it's funny to see a Chinese essentially soap opera that's like, no, 30 for
Yeah,
this one book. That's a
yeah,
prologue for an
it's
interesting book.
it's a lot. They probably could have been condensed to like 12, maybe 15 episodes or something. Because there's a lot of like the thing in like TV shows, like they do like the kind of recap in the beginning, which is like a repeat of like the end of last time, and like yeah, it could be
Maybe if you're watching episodically, you need
yeah.
that. But if you're like, well, that was 6 minutes ago.
Yeah. I watched it when it first came out. Like we were watching it like every day because like they'd had it like every day, except like 6 days a week they would have an episode. We were watching it every day. So it's
Yeah,
still
I used your account to log in and watch some of it for free. And then when your account expired, so too did my interest.
yeah. But for people who still want to watch it, like it's out there. I think Peacock just announced that they're gonna pick it up and they're gonna show it.
If Peacock wants to sponsor us, then I'll hop
Yeah.
back on.
Peacock or Netflix or whoever wants to
Co-host,
sponsor us. Yeah.
are you into that?
We're open.
Yeah, cool.
I do want to talk about kind of our plan. So I think for me personally, I think I would rather talk about the series. It's full spoilers. Like there's gonna be a lot of shows that talk about like spoiler-free review or whatever. And like I think it's more interesting to talk about the show in the context of the entire series, especially
Thank
because
God.
I think especially because it seems like they're mixing some concepts of all three seasons into this first season, which is presumably just the first book, but it seems like there's more. Anyway, so if you're spoiler averse and haven't read it and like not, don't want to know what happens, then you might want to find other podcasts. But like to me, like I think it's more interesting from a book reader's perspective to talk about the series from the full context. Do you guys agree?
I completely agree because I think this is
100%.
this is primarily a book podcast, and I
Yeah.
think that whatever materials we view are within the context of book reading. And so it will also be really, really frustrating and annoying to hold back if there is some
Yeah.
concept that's explored in the show that like is not up to par like as far as the book goes, or like you done really well. It'll be annoying to like avoid any book spoilers. So yeah, I completely agree.
We might let stuff slip too, right? Like, like we just can't help ourselves talking about the series. So,
We'd have to censor the podcast so much. It'd be like full of
yeah,
beeps.
right.
That's, we don't want
We
to do that to our actors.
I mean, we spoil the Three Body series in episodes about other books. So,
Right, right. People are used to it by now. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so last chance for people who are listening who have not read the series, who don't want to be spoiled on the any events of on any of the books, any three books, that this is your warning. So yeah, to get in now, I think let's get into discussion.
Oh,
I guess.
I have one thing on
Oh,
just
sure.
on the spoiler note. So probably for the first episode, I think it would be interesting, since we've already, barn doors are open, might as well go in. I think we should recap like what the three body problem is, just a summary of what this series is looking to explore. So even if you haven't read the books before, you don't need to be like an in-depth book nerd. We can discuss, you know, the point of the series and why it's so popular, what we got out of it, and then hop into just being a casual Netflix viewer, I think is also going to be fine.
Yeah, definitely. So however we again we're still discussing how we're going to split up the watching because they're dropping all 8 episodes at once, which is annoying. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think definitely including a summary of the
is
series.
that confirmed that they're doing that? Because sometimes what they do or what they have done with a lot of recent shows that they've released is that they will they'll release like half of the season and then they'll wait like a month before releasing the second half of the season, which is kind of annoying because I would rather have like an episode every week versus half of a season and then wait a month and then the other half of the season because I feel like then I forget kind of like my memory is not as fresh on what happened in the first half of the season. So,
When
uh,
Altered Carbon came out, I was like, I have no memory whatsoever of the beginning of this show.
I've seen it a couple of different places that is referencing that all 20 or all 8 episodes will be coming on the 21st. So yeah,
okay.
If only there were 20 episodes. Can you?
I know.
No, that's too much. That'd be too much for book one.
Yeah,
Then it's just 10 short of the existing series and then where are we? Where do we find ourselves?
I know.
Where do we find ourselves indeed? But yes, our understanding at this moment in time is that it will be a full season drop. There will be 8 episodes as of March 21st,
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah, so we'll put out something somewhere that tells our plans once we decide what our plans actually are. Because I mean, personally, I don't think like discussing all 8 episodes at one time is very interesting. I mean, people will do it, but I don't know. For our show is like more like in segments. It's meant to be that way. It's supposed to be like as like a watch along or read along or whatever. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't want to do like I don't want to like wait, I don't know, like 8 weeks to watch all of them either. So yeah, it's not an easy thing.
It's probably going to be a binge.
Yeah.
We're going to record 8 episodes back to back and then release them daily,
Right.
Dan. That's
Hey,
the simplest way to do it.
might be a thing. Um,
And we
okay.
do have some things to discuss that we have articulated already.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about the our kind of expectations for the show. And just general impressions. Like, are you guys excited? Are you nervous, apprehensive, dreading it? I guess like what are your thoughts on it? And how much you know about it, I guess.
I mean, I am apprehensive only insofar as I look back to the final season fiasco of Game of Thrones, but then I try to tell myself that that is because the final season of Game of Thrones was kind of not guided by any book material, correct? Is that correct?
That's
So
correct.
I am assuming that because there are, there's a full series of written material for them to reference, how badly could they muck it up? Hopefully the answer to that question is not very, but you never know because they are being like from the trailer and from the cast, it seems like they might get pretty experimental and pretty loose with the source material. So yeah, I'm not without my apprehensions, but I'm also equally excited to see this adapted to film and at this capacity.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, zooming out a little bit, like big picture, we are on this podcast. We started discussing the three body problem, and it's led us through several seasons because we all read this book and we were so excited to be able to discuss it and to be able to think about these things and talk about it. And it was pretty hard to find people who shared that. So from a podcast host's point of view, it's kind of a dream come true, right? Like it's a series that I'll just speak for myself then, that I really care about and enjoyed and find a lot of depth. And that's why I can return to it. And it's going to be picked up and adapted and spread to a wider audience. And not only that, it's being done by established showrunners who already have, for better or for worse, they already have a following and they already have a legacy. So I'm just very, very excited from that aspect for the sharing of this experience. I think it'll be really great to have it more in the consciousness of people besides Redditors who turned into a podcast. Obviously, yeah, exactly. Obviously, I do share everyone's adaptation woes, apprehension when you have something that you care about that's being adapted, because it's impossible, right? It's impossible to adapt something perfectly. And, there's like big picture worries about the fact that, like, throughout this series, there's a character who has to be South American, a character who has to be American. I think Wade has to be American, just for aspects of his character. And then there's sort of like slightly more peripheral Japanese and British characters. But apart from that, largely this wide variety of like human exploration, thought, and science and philosophy is all through Chinese characters. And I'm very worried that that will not play, and people will think that you can't make such a wide story with an entirely Chinese cast. So obviously a little bit worried about the liberties that they might take. That's me worrying about their worries, which leads us back into chains of suspicion. So point is, I'm a mixed bag, but I'm excited. How about you, Dan? You've been
Yeah.
excited to know your point of view.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, like we actually originally started this podcast specifically because the Netflix show was announced, right? I was like, oh, that's probably a good opportunity to start a podcast, and I have a lot of experience on, having read the series and loving it, and wanting talking about it more with other people. And so that was actually one of the conceits of this podcast to start with, was that talking about the foreknowledge that this show is coming up, and so people would possibly listen to it when they're getting ready. I didn't think it would take this long for this TV show to come out. We started the podcast back in what, 2020 or something. So it's been a while, but yeah, I think initially my thoughts have kind of evolved over time. I think I think initially I was way on the apprehensive side, like being like really scared they're going to make any adaptation changes, that they're not going to be faithful to the source material. But I think like as like it's getting closer to the show coming out, I think I'm getting more excited about it. Like I'm okay with like the changes that I'm seeing, and knowing that, like, reading articles that Lisa Shin has actually blessed the changes and thinks that the adaptation changes are good. He mentioned that in an article, and so like knowing that, I think I'm getting more excited, and it actually even might be part of it might the part of the contribution to my opinion change might actually be Reddit being contrarian to people on there who are just like freaking out constantly about like, oh my God, they're gonna screw it up, they're gonna screw it up. It's like, guys, just watch the show. Like I'm sure it'll be fine.
Right.
Like maybe it'll
Before
suck.
you hate it.
Yeah, maybe it'll suck and maybe it won't. Like I also didn't like the last season of Game of Thrones. I read the whole Song of Ice and Fire series. I was really into that. They did do a good job with the stuff that they had, and maybe like they were just tired of tired of the show by the time they got to the last season, and that's why it was terrible. A lot of the original ideas were bad anyway, but they're competent like showrunners. I think they'll do a good job. They seem genuinely excited. I think they learned their lesson from all the mistakes that they made with Game of Thrones, and will continue into making an even better show. And they seem to be, reverent of the source material, and they have like I don't know. It seems like they have good ideas around how they're kind of like reworking the show. I mean, like all of us have problems with the pacing of the books at times. I think we all love the story, but we all can say like, oh, this part can be tightened up, or this could probably be like we all know like the characterization of Wang Miao is not good. There's no characterization of him. So if we get an additional like more context around him and or whoever his analog is, then I think the show will be better for it, and people will be be more interested in it, right? We want people to stick around. We want people to like this series. We want to talk about it more people.
Here, here.
I would say the thing I am the most apprehensive about is not so like the two major threads on Reddit are always like the show is gonna suck and I love Wade and Changxing sucks. Like my apprehension is like the Wade becomes the same person he is in the book and people worship him the way they worship like the character of Wade in the book. I really hope that doesn't happen. I hope that he has more depth to his character and that he's not just like an evil sociopathic, person like he is in the book who just wants to
Oh, those
destroy
are the
humanity.
fighting words. I disagree with you, Dan. Can't wait to get into that.
We can get into it
I
now.
didn't even know there was a Wade fandom.
Oh my God. The entirety of Reddit, like nothing like the half of Reddit, every single post is like Changxin sucks and Wade is the best. And the reason that Changxin is the reason that everything is wrong. And if you listen to Wade, then everything would have been perfect. But
I
no,
think I think I can
it's
correct both of these. I can correct it to, well, it's all about Luo Ji. It's not about either of these guys.
Logi the legend, obviously. But
Exactly. I want to see Luo Ji, the legend, portrayed correctly on screen, please.
that's the most important part. Yes, I concur.
So yeah, I think this is probably a good segue to get into the actual like there's been a lot of speculation about who the analogs of the characters are. So they announced all these new characters, and none of them have like not a lot of them have names that we recognize. There are some that we have. We have Yo and Jie has the old version and the young version, so we can assume that that storyline is going to kind of play out similarly. We have Mike Evans, who is also in the book, and here we have an older version and a younger version of him. Um, and we have Wade, who's played by Liam Cunningham, who played Davos in Game of Thrones. And also Mike Evans, the older version of Mike Evans is played by Jonathan Pryce, who was the High Sparrow in the Game of Thrones series. But otherwise, all the other characters. Oh, we have Sofon, who I guess they're moving up from book three to the book to the first part of the book. It seems like she's going to be sort of in the VR simulation and maybe like driving the VR storyline a bit. But otherwise, all the other characters are new, and they have this concept called the Oxford Five, which is a group of five scientists. And oh, sorry, I forgot one. Dasher is in the book,
And
and
Dasha,
yeah, he's in there too. Yeah, he's
homie, of course.
yeah, can't guard him.
Yes. You can include the link to the show mapping because, like Dan says, they have invented this conceit of the Oxford Five, presumably to draw in a reasonable explanation for why non-Chinese academicians would be together. By the way, I was counting this up as I was thinking about the three body problem. If you go through all the like named characters, the ones who actually have information about them, like more than half of them have a PhD.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, the very scientific book. Yeah.
Anyway, but yes, Oxford Five.
But yeah, I mean, looking at, there's been a lot of speculation about like who matches up to who, and it seems like they're like, given the descriptions of the characters that were put out by the show, and sort of maybe even the names, somewhat like they kind of match up against maybe the characters that happen throughout the entire series. For example, there's a character called Jin Cheng, who is played by Jess Hong, who is just seems like it's going to be like a Changxin analog. And then there is another character called Saul Durand, who, given his description, it seems like he's going to be the Luo Ji of the series, which would be interesting because, like, yeah, like Freya mentioned, like a lot of people, like I think the most apprehension is like around what people are going to do to Luo Ji. To me, like if he's not Chinese, I think it's okay. Like I think that all of these characters, if they're not Chinese, it's
Fine.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine. He just needs to be done correctly.
Yeah, to me, it's like more about the characterization and like what they do and like their motivations and like Boji's story, like and if they strip out the imaginary girlfriend, that's okay. But like if they keep his arc, like
They can sunset
yeah,
that and keep his desire to live like modern day king and, his
yeah,
facing abilities. Yeah, obviously nothing about that is specifically Chinese.
they do have to keep the part where he like pulls the old wine out of the bottom of the ocean just to drink it.
Oh my gosh. What is
Yes.
your obsession with that?
It's the best.
It
It's
is
so
it is
not.
amazing. And then he gets does he or does he not fall
He
Yeah.
incredibly
gets
ill?
violently ill
Yeah.
from his very, very expensive ship wine. I don't know why you two are both so interested in that
I think
scene.
I think it's because I saw an incredible Reddit post about it one time. And it was just really funny. And I can't even describe it now, but it's somewhere
How do
on
you
Reddit. I think it's called Luoji Enjoyer or something, and you have to just go look it up on Reddit.
how do you know the most niche Luoji Reddit threads and not know the Wade fandom? Like your online activity is baffling to me, Priya.
Well, my online activity has changed over the years. So, back when I was trying to look
We've been waiting for the show.
um
Okay.
for outlets for discussion on the series after having, just read it,
Yeah,
then I was moonlighting on Reddit and I saw all these amazing memes
totally.
and GIFs and all this wonderful
And
stuff.
like there's fan art and like there are people who are interested. That's true.
We will have to link that Reddit post that I am
Oh
referencing.
my
It still
gosh.
Yeah. Way to
exists
find it.
with this episode. I
I
will
think I,
find and I'll send it to you, Dan.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't want to go through every single character, but it seems like there's a Wang Miao an analog. There is a Zhang Beihai. There is even a Yun Tianming possible analog.
Mm.
And then there's also like two new characters who is John Bradley who played uh what's his face Sam in Game of Thrones. He but I don't know we don't know who he matches up against. And then there's another character who is called Tatiana, who seems to be more of like an ETO enforcer, possibly. There was like a character in the TV show that was sort of like that same kind of character. So I'm interested to see if like, who she actually like ends up being.
Are you excited to see redemptionists and Adventists and
Yeah.
techno-triumphalists and all
I mean,
factions that you're into?
more factions the better. Well, hopefully I mean like there's enough factions in the book. They don't need to make up new ones. So
The more faction indulgence, the
right,
better.
right. Yeah. Hopefully they lean into it. Because who doesn't love a good faction? Yeah, I guess like we the three of us all met on Reddit, so like obviously like we're all like on like, have experience with that. I don't know how much you guys actually like read the three body Reddit still, but I'm still pretty active on. I mean, I don't post a lot on there, but I do like still read them a lot. Uh,
Like
yeah.
Priya, like I feel like we found our outlet. Like we were seeking someone to talk to about all this stuff. We found it. Although, yeah, Priya, you can chime in.
So my first course of action whenever I read something that's like as mind-blowing as this is I try to convince the people around me to read it, and then the people around me will not read it. So then I go on Reddit and I try to find my people.
We've
So
already read it.
yeah. So
So true.
so yeah, there was I was that's how I found this podcast, and I think that I might be guilty as one of the people that Dan refers to as like a Ching Sheen hater, because I made a post about that and now I don't remember. And
That's right. Yeah,
I don't remember the post, but Dan is like
Butterfly effect.
he's a Cheng Sheen defender on Reddit, so he
that's
like
true.
chimed in. And then I looked at his posts and I saw like that he does the podcast and I listened to it and then that's how I got involved. So but it was super
Origin
uh
stories.
I know. It was super helpful to me for my brain to like get it out of my system to be able to talk about this book, because I think anyone who has read this series knows that once you've read this series, like you need to talk about it with somebody. Like you will
Mhm.
not be okay to just sit on it. So
Yeah.
so yeah,
So true.
I kind of, have not been following the Reddit conversations lately, especially because before a show is about to be released, I kind of want to stay away from the conversations a little bit because I don't want to go into something like prejudging. So, in general, I don't like actively avoid trailers, but a lot of times, I go into movies not having seen the trailer, and I feel like I enjoy it more because I have no idea what I'm expecting going in.
Hmm.
So, I have
I would
seen the trailers for this, but just in general, like the less chatter about it beforehand, from all the, discerning voices on Reddit, the better, I think, for me.
Discerning's a nice word for
It
it.
really is. I would say that I do avoid some of the like created buzz, like the trailers. I can definitely identify with that. But I have been reading a little bit more, engaging a little bit more on Reddit just because, my excitement is building and, there's some other readers whose excitement is also building, and it feels a little bit more like chatting with friends and acquaintances than it does just you know following all these people on tour or like watching these trailers would. But
Yeah.
we all have different attitudes. Different. I should be on Reddit if only to be another Changxin defender so Dan doesn't do the hard work alone.
Yeah, I couldn't, I mean, for a long time, I couldn't help myself. Like every time I saw a post that said Chungsheen sucks. And like it always invariably ends up with like, and Wade is right and Wade is the best. Yeah. I couldn't help myself with like, chime in, like, why that's wrong and why I think that's wrong.
In my
Um,
defense, though, I do remember that my post had nothing
yeah,
nothing about glorifying Wade, and
yeah.
it was a little more nuanced than Cheng Sheen sucks.
But yeah,
I'm pretty
definitely.
sure it would have been.
No, I mean,
Um,
I generally wouldn't have responded. Like, well, now I probably would, but before I wouldn't have responded if it was just like some, you know, I
like
just
a
have,
troll, like a shit post, right?
yeah, yeah, basically, yeah. It's just people who just like, I just read the book and I hate Chungsheen and Wade is the best. And why don't people listen to Wade? And if people, if people just would Wade, what if people would have just let Wade blow up some of the space stations, like everything would have been okay and murdered millions of people to get his way. Like it would have been
Gosh,
fine.
brains like a kidney bean, no grooves, all smooth, no ridges.
Right. But I mean, yeah, again, I'm super worried about like when they first announced this series, I'm just worried like all of like these like I mean to me like I equate like Wade lovers with like right wingers. Like it's just like people have like uh, I mean I don't care about getting political on this show because like whatever, but like I just have like this like
Oh, we're going there now.
I equate Wade supporters with Trump supporters basically. Like
I stand by my smooth brain assertions. I change nothing.
yeah. And if we lose the MAGA crowd from our podcast, like, well, what are you gonna do? They probably weren't gonna listen anyway because like it's Chinese propaganda or whatever. All right. Well, I think the next thing I wanted to talk about was things in the show that you're excited. Like we kind of know that like the first season is going to be, roughly book one. I mean, they're going to pull in the elements from books two and three seems like, but I mean, it seems like roughly going to cover the events of book one. So I guess like what are the things that you guys are most interested in seeing, like how they portray it on the, with their gigantic budgets and, special effects and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the entire game plot through the first book. So, if we can get a really fleshed out, like adventurous, suspenseful, exciting VR experience, I think that'll be really fun and something that the industry already has experience with, like that kind of um, immersive AR, VR, and then like switching back and forth between that reality and this. And I think tracking I hope they go into like the fanaticism, I guess, like people who get really into this game, they become the precursors to the ETO. And they follow the pathway of playing this beautiful and sophisticated and elegant game and sort of fall down this rabbit hole of like, there must be a better world, that must be a better civilization. Humanity must be wrong. This must be the reason, like, or not the reason, but this must be an answer to the general malaise and woe of the world. And they become fanatics. And I think anytime we can trace that, that's a fascinating. I hope that we get into precursors to the ETO and get a really immersive AR VR experience.
Yeah, I think that they're going to lead into it. Like their early marketing material, like focus on the headset that people use for the game, and I think like the early teaser for the series like was just John Bradley in the VR simulation. So it seems like they're really going to lead into it. Yeah, it should definitely be interesting. I want to see the computer scene. That was always like one of the things that sticks in my mind from the VR simulations.
Which one?
Uh,
The
the
computers. Oh, yes, yes,
yeah,
yes, of course.
the
The
human computer
construction of the
scene.
computer.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that was the best.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that'd be really cool.
and I'll say like the Chinese version did a really good job with the VR stuff. I think they contracted some game studio or something to generate all the graphics, and they look great. It was like different enough
Yeah.
from the show. And I thought they did a great job on all the in-game stuff.
I mean, it is thrilling. Like when you first learn that you can construct logic gates, it does feel like a mind-opening,
Yeah,
fun experience, like bitwise exclusive or and gate and NAND gate. Actually, like these are made of very simple components. And yeah, it's fun to see it done well.
I think I'm just excited to see. I'm not excited to see any of that stuff. I'm just excited to see how they rehydrate and dehydrate these characters who are going to be in the game. So um that will be pretty intriguing because it could like it has to be done a certain way to not look incredibly stupid. So that I hope they're up for that challenge.
yeah,
I'm
Um,
excited to see the like horse in flames and the super gravity of the syzygy, like anything bodily. I'm with you. I hope it's done well and not
yeah,
in a corny way.
And I think like the trailers really like based off what we see in the trailers, there's a lot of focus on scenes that look like they're from the game. So I
yeah.
feel like they're probably going to focus a lot on that. Like there will probably be a few episodes that take place in this the virtual realm. So I would hope that they have really done it its dues, given it its dues. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, the first time I read the book, the three body problem, I was actually like kind of getting bored with like the game parts of it, just because like the how they like pull in like new the historical characters, like on every like they're like, oh, now it's like Newton's there, and now it's like Einstein's there. And it's like, oh, all right, yeah. I was like, is the whole book gonna be this, right? And like I was just like.
I wish.
I mean, I was glad when like the book ended and like the store or like not the book and that when the game ended, like it was not like I don't know, like two-thirds of the way through the book or whatever, and like the game is ended, and then they got into like meeting up, like the meetups and like talking about the
I
ETO.
am a King Wen of Joe admirer. I identify with King Wen of Joe follower. That is me.
I mean, some of the stuff was cool, but like I don't know, like to me, like when they got past that, that was like that's like when it really started hooking me. When I think like the first moment that really, really sticks out in my memory is like when Yao Jay is like is revealed as the leader of ETO. It's like, oh, okay, I get it now, right? Like, and then it all
Mm.
kind of like clicks into place. Like obviously, like I liked other parts of the book before then too. But that's like when it really started clicking. And then like the rest, the end of the book, like the end two-thirds, like with all this the creation of Sophon chapters and all the other ETO stuff, like
Oh
that
yeah.
was all mind blowing, right? Like I was well
I
into
think
it by
there's
that point.
consensus on that.
Yeah. But yeah, it'd be interesting just to see how they handle the VR stuff. There's also like really big set pieces that are coming up, the Judgment Day, the and the Panama Canal, see if they do it the same way there.
I liked the adaptation of that in the Chinese version of Judgment Day.
Uh
I am curious if they'll go as gory. Oh, I think there's like a slightly more animated I've been down the rabbit hole with all these adaptations, but I don't know if they actually want to. I mean, we're doing a spoiler show, right? Like, actually want to show people getting like sliced into a net of
yeah.
viscera. That could be a little much for me. It was tough to even say that.
I think like they did a great job on the Chinese show for the visuals of how the ship getting sliced really looked. What I didn't like was they interjected additional story onto it. Like all of the people on the ship were like really bad guys, right? Like they had to like be all really bad guys, so they all
Boo.
got killed, right? And it's like,
Boo.
I mean,
Let
like
humanity be a little dark.
I think like the ETO is like it's interesting because it's just normal people who are like disillusioned with with, humanity, right? And so like, yeah, Wenjie is one of them. Yeah, Wenjie is disillusioned with humanity because she saw her father get killed like right in front of her, and like she saw like the worst of society happen in
And
the
that's
Cultural Revolution. She's not a
that's the
bad
listener,
person. She's just like a person who's gone through a lot of stuff, right? And like completely disillusioned.
just a person, and that's
Yeah.
Chang-Xin as well, and that's the listener as well. The listener on Trisolaris is not like an evil hater.
Yeah.
Uh, He's just like has a lonely, sad, sorry job with low prestige and no friends and no prospects, and makes a decision,
And feels
right?
bad for humanity, right? He's like, we are going to destroy you if you answer this
Mhm.
message, right? And like, so he's like the one person that tries Solaris is like not looking out for
Just
he's not like,
disillusioned,
yeah,
cares
right,
about
right,
something besides himself. And so, yeah, I hope that they don't indulge in like hand wringing about good guys v bad guys, because I think that's such a narrow scope.
right, right. I think that's why I mean, that's one of the many reasons I don't like Wade because he's just really a bad guy. Like, there's no
That's not
redemption to him, right?
true.
There's
That's not
no,
true.
there's no good parts to him. Like, the only thing about him is
He's
like he's
focused on
advanced at any
survival.
cost and kill, uh, who's
It's
the other
people like
scientist?
Wade who make the Dark Forest exist. Like he is clearly just a representative of like so many of the aspects of cosmic sociology. I think that's just a
Yeah.
reality that's painted.
Yeah, he's a little too one-dimensional for me, and like, I don't know. I don't think there was no other aspects to his personality besides
He
like
could be more.
he was a guy who would like advance at any cost, and like yeah, I forgot who's the Russian guy that he killed. That was like the other
Oh
person.
yeah,
He like
he did
he
kill his colleague.
yeah, he killed his colleague just to like get his way. He almost tried to murder I mean, he tried to murder Changxin just to get his way. Tried a million murder people to get his way with the antimatter bullets. And yeah, the
And that's
only
why I think, and we've discussed it before, like it would be nice to have a little bit of characterization. We even like fantasized a little plot where like he owed Changxin something, and like that's why he had to include her seeds with the launch of the brain. Like there had to be some
mm,
kind of dimensionality, because otherwise, like to your point, it makes no sense that he woke her up,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because like that's a universe changing, like civilization changing decision. And it needs something to stand on
yeah.
to be believable.
Yeah, and his actor, the actor who's portraying him, William Cunningham, he's really good. He did a great job as Davos. He can really act. So like he can add a lot of characterization. So I hope he like brings more to that character, um, and not just like evil guy, evil sociopath guy.
I think one of the things that Liu Cixin does really well is that he spins a lot of symbolism into both characters and into the stories within stories that he has. Like if you see the formula is kind of the same for the VR game as it is for later on Yun Tinming's fairy tales, which is that you have these fantastical elements presented in the form of either a game or a fairy tale story embedded within a story that leaves you wondering, like, is this literal or is this metaphorical? Like this object that's presented to us or this scenario that's presented to us. And when you are reading it, like the first time you encounter this type of a scenario is in the VR game, and you are thinking, well, all of this must be symbolic for something. But then later on, you're surprised to find out that some things are actually literal, like rehydrating and dehydrating is a literal thing that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on with the Yun Tianming fairy tales, it's the portrait, the painting is a literal thing that's happening. That the most horrifying thing is not the metaphor.
Right.
So knowing
Insight,
that he
yeah.
yeah, knowing that he plays with it in this way, I really hope that this intrigue comes through and comes across when these particular stories and like the game are adapted to film. And then the other thing is that a lot of these characters are kind of like themselves metaphors for a lot of different things, a lot of different schools of thinking on certain subjects, like, what do you do when you are faced with a conflict like this? Like, one person is actually representative of an entire faction of people that will form around a certain conflict. So I also hope that these little nuances and the depth and the scope of how he uses metaphor is really put or is really done justice on film.
Yeah, and I think one interesting thing about the first book also is that it's, kind of building on what you're talking about, is it's set up as a mystery, right? Like we don't even know that there's aliens involved until pretty late in the book, actually, right? Like we look back on it and be like, oh, it's obvious, right? But like the book is really set up as like a sort of like mystery um story where you're trying to figure out what's going on. And from the trailers, it seems they're kind of leaning into that too, and even more of like a horror aspect too. There's like a scene where Dasher is looking out of some room and it's like covered in blood with writing on the numbers, right? on the wall. So they're like, I
Yeah.
hope that they kind of lean into the mysterious aspect of it, and like don't just like say, oh, it's aliens right away. Right. I think that was the more interesting part of it, is like the aliens are a reveal. And so
Yeah, definitely.
it always kind of
We'll
annoys
see.
me, like when I see like a summary of like the story where they talk about, oh, it's aliens are coming in 400 years. Like, well, that's at the end of the book. Like, don't tell people that right away. Like, that's the interesting part, is figuring out like why all this stuff is happening, like what the ETO is, and like what when Jay was doing, all these things.
Yeah, no, I agree because I was worried about or not worried, but like aware that the reveal that they're aliens, and then the reveal that we get in the very early prologue of book two, which is the revelation of the Trisolarans, like single known weakness. Like for me, that was a catalyst. As soon as I read that, I'm like, I'm going to finish this entire series. That's a fascinating idea to play with.
Hmm.
I'm a little worried that they're going to slip that into the first season because I think, are not going to think it's going to stand alone. But we'll see. We'll see if we get the truth about the Trisolarans and their relationship to the truth in the early
Yeah.
days.
And in the Chinese one, they actually showed the Trisolarans. I'm wondering if, in the book they didn't. They never described the actual, like, physical appearance of the Trisolarans, but in the Chinese adaptation they did show it. So I sort of wonder how they're going to handle that. If they're going to
How did they show them in the Chinese show? I'm
uh
never gonna watch it. Can you
oh
spoil it?
yeah, I mean they look, kind of blobby, alieny, like long and I don't know, like I think they had like reflective. I mean, I think that they talk about having
Actually
reflective skin or
reflective.
something, right? Like they
That's for
reflect.
communication. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so my favorite theory about what the Trisolarans look like is that they're little tiny insect-like creatures.
You actually like
That's
that?
I
You
actually
like
do
that?
like
I don't
I
The
like
like
it.
grains
it,
of
and
light
I'll
side?
I'll tell you why I like it. It's
Okay.
because I think there are many instances in which they refer to humans as bugs. And I think that it would be so funny if they're the ones who are bugs, but they actually think that that's like, if people found out that they're just little bugs, their weakness would be revealed. But you know how bugs are like a formidable force because there's just so many of them. I think that that is what plays to their strength, in fact. But they don't want to let people know that it's just a bunch of tiny little insects that are, operating this
Wow.
whole, thing. So
About
I
to defender. Oh my gosh.
so no, so I think that this is an idea that Lucy Shin kind of like signed off on when he wrote his whole, like, spin-off or whatever, which was, I mean, it was terrible in so many ways. It's just like one little aspect that I was on board with. And I think I like the fact that the series never reveals this Trisolarans to us, because I think that maintaining
Never
that
has to.
mystery, yeah, I
That's
think
so smart.
it plays so intelligently with the idea of a threat that's coming in like 400 years. It kind of amplifies the unknown, right? We don't know what this is, And we know that it's not going to be here for like 400 years. We won't face it in our generation. We haven't even seen what it looks like. So that kind of adds layers of motivation or non-motivation for doing anything to combat or curtail this impending conflict that becomes like a faction of thinking around this. So
I'm
uh, yeah, I hope that they don't show the Trisolarans.
Frankly, I just love the idea that this entire series plays with, which is this like frustrating concept of missing each other, right? Like that comes all the way through this entire book. Like we are built up to the Trisolarans and then we never get to see them. The lovers never actually have an opportunity to be lovers. They're either sent through space away from each other or missing each other through time or having lost a body. And then they're like hours away from each other and they never spend a single day together. You
Mm.
know, we get to see the fourth wall face where we get to see Zhang Beihai do everything correctly and execute a flawless plan against all odds and like do everything right and he gets blown up, right? Like he doesn't get to lead humanity. And that's sort of the point. Like we never get to see Singer. We never get to see the 10-dimensional, beautiful Edenic universe. That's just not what's in the cards for us. And I think it's really beautiful and really smart to know when to put the pen down and when to not go into something that could easily be like very campy if it's done wrong. And, you know, you don't have that liberty when you're making a visual medium. Like you need to show something if you're going to show the princeps, you know, constructing
Yeah.
a sophont. But it's definitely an idea that I've recognized and appreciated throughout this series.
Yeah, and that's when they showed the Trisolarans and the Chinese adaptation when they were doing like the sofa construction and they showed the listener chapter. You know, they had to do they had to show something, and so they came up with an idea of like what they kind of look like. Yeah, it's such like a fundamental principle of the like a foundational part of the book where we don't see them, right?
I would be fine with that all happening. You can torture the plot, however, to just happen in VR, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I think
like
that's
I
okay.
we trust you. We're gonna like beam this into your head about what happened. Like that would be fine by me. A little hand waving behind the scenes. I'm already bought in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think like I mean when they find out about the Sofan construction, it's just a readout of reports that they got from the Judgment Day, right? So it could just easily happen in VR. Like I think that's perfectly fine. As part of this anticipation for the show, are you guys thinking about rereading the series? Like I don't think I will. I might because it's like it's been a couple years since I read them. But so I might, but I'm not planning on it. But how about you guys?
Yeah, I reread the first book.
You already did?
Yeah.
I'm considering it. I might like I'm kind of conflicted because I don't know that after knowing all that I know of the series, if I can stomach a reread of book one. It's not that it's bad, it's just that it's like when you go into it for the first time not knowing what to expect, everything is more intriguing. But knowing what to expect, you're kind of like, oh, this is like you're not even getting to the meat of it until like so far in. So,
Yeah.
but I do feel like I need a bit of like book refresher to be able to even do justice to our podcast when we start recording. So, because I'm
Mm.
sure that I will want to be able to readily reference the books. So I think I will probably pick the books up again closer to when the show is going to air.
Yeah, I think if anything, I'd probably like read it after that. Like I would probably like watch the show and then like want to reread it. But I don't have any plans right now. I think I've read it.
Something to tide over until the next season.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've read it like 4 or 5 times now. I don't remember how many times. Because I kind of mixed like reading it versus listening to the audiobook, and I've like done both. And plus, like for this podcast, like I reread, I like not even read it, but like really detailed read it and like made summaries of it. So like I'm pretty, yeah, yeah. So we actually like if you don't want to read the books, we have summaries for all the every single chapter part or however we split up the podcast. Like we have like detailed summaries, so you can read those
Oh,
instead.
really do. The only closing note that I have about, the adaptation from book to movie or to show rather is I hope that if they're going to step away from the Chinese elements, I hope that they do it decisively. Um, because I do trust them to read the source material and be reverent and appreciate the source material, but only to an extent. Like when the Sophons are realizing their inability to deceive and that humans have this ability, like they reference the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, 三国演义, and I just do not trust these showrunners to read this Chinese text, to understand the strategist reference there. And I think that like sort of nerdy deep dive that they would have to do to really get it is going to detract, and I don't think they will. So I hope if we're going to immerse ourselves in all of the concepts that they choose good analogs outside of the Chinese tradition rather than like halfway doing them. So that's something I'm hopeful that is done right, I guess.
So does that mean there won't be King Joe in the VR simulation? Because I didn't know who he was.
Oh my gosh, exactly. And like every kid in China knows about like the Shang dynasty and the Zhou dynasty, and like, it's like saying Aristotle,
Right.
but more like it's a known name. So anyway, I hope they step away from it rather than doing
Try to make it
wrong.
like George Washington or something.
Oh my gosh.
Then Reddit is like, okay, that's justified freaking out if like that happens. I'll be okay with
Yeah. I'll join with my pitchfork. All in all though, very excited.
Yeah, same.
And hey, I would like to say a word in defense of Weiss and Benioff, which is that no matter what they did with season 8, there's something to be said about what Game of Thrones was in its peak seasons. It was like one of the best shows that's ever been made. So
Yeah.
I think that if they go into this with the same, fervor as they went into Game of Thrones and have put the past, which is season 8, behind them and have returned to the arena with renewed vigor. I think that there's no reason why this can't turn out to be great. So I am going to go into this. I like to think of myself as a reluctant optimist, so that's how I will go into this and expect good things.
Yeah, I mean, like early Game of Thrones seasons up till I don't know 4 or 5, early 5 when it started to drop off. Like it was like peak TV.
I get back into Game of Thrones. I can't
Yeah.
start pulling it apart again. It's already robbed me so many hours of my short life.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think they're great showrunners. I don't think they're great writers, but they are great.
Thank them for you.
Yeah.
That's worthwhile.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. And like I said, once we actually have a plan of what we're going to do with the show, we will make that known. But for now, thanks for listening. Please check out rehydrate.space for released episodes, reading lists, pronunciation guides for all the characters' names, and all the other stuff we put up there. And leave us comments by emailing us at rehydrate@fastmail.com, on Twitter at RehydratePod, or on Mastodon at rehydrate@mast.to. And please follow us there to find out when the next episode's coming up, and hope to talk to you then.